The emergency room smelled like antiseptic and cold fluorescent light. Serena Caldwell lay on a narrow hospital bed in Chicago General, her body still trembling from the seizure that had hit without warning 2 hours earlier. The monitors beeped in steady rhythm. The doctor had said one word no pregnant woman ever wants to hear: preeclampsia. She was 28 years old, 6 months along, and completely alone. Dominic had been called at 7:14 p.m. She knew because she watched the nurse dial his number herself. He had not shown up. At 10:47 p.m., a woman in a gray blazer knocked and stepped in. She was not a doctor. She set a manila envelope on the bedside table next to Serena's cracked iPhone and a half-eaten cup of hospital gelatin. "Mr. Ashford asked me to deliver these," the woman said, without meeting Serena's eyes. "He needs your signature before midnight." Serena already knew what was inside. For 3 years, she had given everything to that man. She had left her own career behind. She had managed his calendar, his household, his mother's birthday dinners, and his public image at every Ashford Group charity gala at the Ritz-Carlton on Michigan Avenue. She had loved him quietly and completely. Now she lay in a hospital bed with monitors strapped to her belly, and he had sent a paralegal. The envelope sat on the table for 40 minutes before a nurse accidentally knocked it to the floor. When it fell open, Serena saw 3 words printed at the top: "Petition for dissolution." She did not cry. She pressed her palm flat against her stomach and felt the small, certain flutter from inside. Her son, shifting in the dark, unaware of what the world above him had just decided. She signed the papers at 11:52 p.m. Not because she wanted to, but because she understood that this fight could not be won from a hospital bed. What she did not know, what no one in that room knew, was that sitting just down the hall, nursing a cold black coffee, was a man named Franklin Cole. He was holding a sealed document that would change everything. And her name was written at the very top. The hospital discharged Serena at 8:22 in the morning. No one came to pick her up. She sat in the lobby for 20 minutes in the same clothes she had worn the night before, a soft gray maternity sweater and dark jeans. Both wrinkled, both carrying the faint smell of antiseptic. Her discharge papers were folded in her purse. Her phone had 4% battery. She had called Dominic twice. Both calls went to voicemail. She did not call a third time. Outside, Chicago was gray and cold. November had stripped the last leaves off the trees along Michigan Avenue. She stood on the sidewalk and just breathed. The air was sharp. It hurt a little. That felt appropriate. She had $41 in her personal checking account. The joint account had already been frozen. She found out when she tried to pay the hospital copay at the front desk. The woman at the counter looked at her with careful, practiced neutrality. That look was somehow worse than pity. Serena took a cab she could not afford to the apartment on Lakeshore Drive. She used her key. The lock had been changed. Her single suitcase sat in the hallway outside the door, packed by someone else, probably the housekeeper. Inside, 3 changes of clothes, her laptop, her passport, and the framed photo of her mother from the bedroom nightstand. Whoever packed it had not included her prenatal vitamins. She stood in that hallway for a long moment. Then, she picked up the suitcase, walked to the elevator, and pressed the lobby button without looking back. On the cab ride to a budget motel near O'Hare, she opened her laptop and typed 4 words into the search bar. Jobs. Chicago. No experience. 800 results loaded. Most required references she no longer had. Most paid less than she needed. She scrolled past restaurant work, retail, overnight cleaning shifts. Then she stopped. A small diner in a town called Hollow Creek, 40 minutes outside the city, was hiring a full-time waitress, $9 an hour plus tips. The listing had been up for 3 weeks, and not a single person had applied. Hollow Creek was not the kind of town that appeared on anyone's radar. No Starbucks, no Whole Foods. One stoplight on the main road and a water tower with the town name painted in letters that had been fading since the early 2000s. The kind of place people passed through on the way somewhere else and never thought about again. Serena arrived on a Tuesday with one suitcase, her laptop, and a prenatal vitamin she had bought at a gas station CVS using the last of her cash. The diner sat on the corner of Route 9 and Maple Street. Hand-painted sign above the door. Hollow Creek Diner. Established 1974. Inside, the booths were red vinyl, slightly cracked, and the whole place smelled like coffee and bacon grease and something that felt, unexpectedly, like safety. Dorothy Reeves was behind the counter. Dot was 58 years old, silver hair in a practical bun, reading glasses on a chain around her neck. She looked at Serena, the obvious pregnancy, the single bag, the careful way Serena held herself together, and said nothing about any of it. She poured 2 cups of coffee and set one across the counter. "You the one who called about the job?" "Yes, ma'am." "You ever waitressed before?" "No." Dot studied her a moment. "You willing to learn fast and show up on time?" "Yes." "Good enough." She slid an apron across the counter. "Start tomorrow. 6 a.m. There's a storage room in the back. Small, not pretty, but it's got a cot and a bathroom, and it stays warm. You can sleep there until your first paycheck." Serena almost said she had other arrangements, but she had $41, a gas station vitamin, and a baby due in 11 weeks. She took the apron. That night, on the narrow cot behind the kitchen wall, she placed both hands on her belly and made a quiet promise to the son she had not yet met. "We are going to be okay." What she could not have known was that 2 booths from where she now slept, a man named Raymond Ashford had eaten breakfast alone every Tuesday morning for 3 weeks, watching the front door, waiting for exactly the person who had just walked through it. While Serena was learning to carry 4 plates at once on sore feet, Dominic Ashford was uncorking a bottle of Billicart salmon champagne on the 43rd floor of his Lakeshore Drive penthouse. Cassandra Vale stood by the floor-to-ceiling window in a silk robe, looking out over the Chicago skyline like she already owned it. She was 31, sharp-featured, effortlessly polished, the kind of woman who had never once waited for anything. Her father, Gerald Vale, ran Vale Industries from a glass tower on Wacker Drive. The merger between Ashford Group and Vale Industries had been Cassandra's idea. The marriage had been the condition. Dominic handed her a glass and touched it lightly with his own. "It's done," he said. Cassandra smiled. It was always going to be done. What she did not say, and what Dominic did not ask, was how the divorce had moved so fast, how the paperwork had reached the hospital the same night Serena was admitted, how a signed copy had been returned before morning. Dominic had not asked those questions because he did not want the answers. That was the kind of man he had become. He told himself the marriage had been hollow long before he ended it. He stood at that window with his Patek Philippe on his wrist and his future neatly arranged in front of him, and he did not think once about the woman he had sent a paralegal to. He did not think about the baby at all. He set down his glass, picked up his MacBook Pro, and opened the merger term sheet one final time. Page 1, paragraph 3. The line that made everything worth it. Upon marriage, Dominic Ashford assumes full controlling interest of Vale Industries' Eastern real estate portfolio. He did not read paragraph 11. Paragraph 11, added quietly by Gerald Vale's private attorney just 3 days earlier, stated that all terms became void if Dominic held an existing heir from a prior marriage with any claim to Ashford Group assets. Someone already knew about the baby. Someone had been planning around it for weeks. Raymond Ashford did not look like a man with a secret. He looked like someone's quiet uncle. 42 years old, broad-shouldered, always in the same worn canvas jacket. He ordered black coffee and eggs over easy every Tuesday morning, tipped exactly 30%, and never looked at his phone while he ate. Dot liked him. That alone made Serena cautious. She had been at Hollow Creek Diner 11 days when he finally spoke to her directly. She was refilling his coffee when he said, without looking up, "You're Serena Caldwell. You were married to Dominic Ashford." Her hand stopped. The coffee pot hovered over his mug. She said nothing. "I'm not here to cause trouble," he said. "I'm Raymond, Dominic's cousin. The one they voted off the board 4 years ago." He looked up. His eyes were steady and tired the way people get when they've carried something heavy too long. "I've been looking for you since October." Serena set the coffee pot down. Her heart was moving fast, but her face was not. "How did you find me?" "Franklin Cole. He told me you'd come here eventually." Raymond reached into his jacket and placed a plain white envelope on the table between them. He did not push it toward her. He just left it there. "That belongs to you. Theodore left it with Franklin 2 months before he died. He made Franklin promise not to deliver it until you were away from Dominic and somewhere safe." Serena looked at the envelope. Her name was written on the front in careful handwriting she did not recognize. She did not touch it. "Why are you doing this?" she asked. Raymond wrapped both hands around his coffee mug. "Because Theodore was the only decent person in that family," he said quietly. "And what they did to you was wrong." Serena stared at the envelope. Then Dot appeared from behind the counter, arms crossed, reading glasses low on her nose, studying Raymond like she was making a final decision about him. "You've got 10 minutes, Dot said flatly. Then she turned to Serena. "And you, sit down. Whatever is in that envelope, you open it here, where I can see you." Serena sat down in the booth across from Raymond. Dot poured herself a coffee and leaned against the counter, close enough to hear everything, far enough to give them the illusion of privacy. Serena picked up the envelope. Her name was written in blue ink, slightly slanted, the handwriting of someone older, deliberate, careful. Theodore Ashford had been 71 when he died. She had met him 4 times. At her wedding, he had shaken her hand, looked her in the eye, and said quietly, "You're too good for this family. I hope we prove you wrong." They had not proved him wrong. She opened the envelope. Inside was a single folded page and a smaller sealed envelope marked, "For Franklin Cole, legal instrument enclosed." She set that aside and unfolded the letter. 3 paragraphs, handwritten, no preamble. The first said he was sorry, not on behalf of Dominic, but for himself, for building a company that rewarded cruelty and called it ambition. The second said he had changed his estate documents 18 months before his death. The trust, $400 million in real estate holdings, liquid assets, and Ashford Group shares, had been restructured. The primary beneficiary was no longer Dominic. It was Serena, and upon the birth of her child, her son would hold the single largest individual stake in Ashford Group, enough to seat him on the board the moment he turned 18. The third paragraph was only 2 sentences. I watched you hold this family together for 3 years, without a single word of thanks. The least I can do is make sure this family cannot survive without you. Serena set the letter flat on the table. She pressed one hand against her belly, slow and steady. Raymond said nothing. Dot walked over, read the second paragraph over Serena's shoulder, set down her cup, and said one word. Good. Then Serena's phone buzzed on the table. Unknown number. Chicago area code. She answered, and heard a voice she had not heard in 4 months. Dominic. Perfectly calm, perfectly controlled. Serena, we need to talk. I know where you are. Serena did not flinch. She looked at Raymond across the table. He had already gone still. The way people go still when they recognize a threat they hoped would come later. She put the phone to her ear. Dominic, I'm glad you picked up. That smooth, measured boardroom tone, the one he used when he had already decided he would get what he wanted. I think we should meet. There are things to discuss before this goes any further. Before what goes any further? A pause. Deliberate. The baby, Serena, and the estate questions Franklin Cole has apparently been raising with our legal team. So he knew about Franklin. She kept her voice flat. There's nothing to discuss. I disagree. The soft clink of crystal in the background, the low hum of 40 floors above Michigan Avenue. He was at the penthouse, comfortable, still certain he was in control. Come back to Chicago. We can work something out that's fair to everyone, including the child. Serena looked down at Theodore's letter on the table, at the word that had already changed everything, even though Dominic did not know it yet. I'll be in touch through my attorney, she said. Don't call this number again. She ended the call. Raymond exhaled slowly. He doesn't know what's in the trust. No, Serena said. He doesn't. Then we have time, but not much. He slid a plain business card across the table. Franklin Cole, attorney at law, Chicago. He's been waiting 6 weeks. He's ready when you are. Serena picked up the card. Then she picked up the smaller sealed envelope, for Franklin Cole, and held both in one steady hand. She was not the woman who had signed papers in a hospital bed anymore. That woman had been alone and cornered. This woman had a letter, a lawyer, and 400 million reasons to stop running. Dot refilled her water glass without a word. Then, quietly, whatever you're about to do, eat something first. You're going to need the strength. Serena almost smiled. It was the closest thing to armor anyone had offered her in months. Serena called Franklin Cole the next morning. He picked up on the first ring. His voice was unhurried, the kind that belonged to a man who had spent 40 years in law and stopped being rattled long ago. Mrs. Caldwell, I was hoping you'd call. Raymond told me you had the letter. I have it, and the sealed envelope. Don't open that one. Bring it to me in person. Raymond drove her in on Wednesday. His truck was old and clean. He did not talk much on the drive, and she appreciated that. She watched flat Illinois farmland give way to the city skyline, and thought about the last time she had driven into Chicago. 8 weeks pregnant, on her way to a Ritz-Carlton charity dinner where she had smiled for 2 hours while Dominic called her his wife like a prop he occasionally remembered to mention. Franklin's office was a modest suite on the 14th floor on LaSalle Street. No marble, no reception desk with a Mont Blanc pen set. Just bookshelves, stacked case files, and a photograph of Theodore Ashford on the wall. Younger, laughing, looking nothing like the man his family had built monuments to. Franklin stood when she walked in. Careful handshake. steady eyes. He opened the sealed envelope himself, as Theodore had instructed. Inside, 14 notarized pages, dated 18 months before Theodore's death. Franklin placed it on the desk between them and pointed to line 1. Serena read it, then read it again. The trust was real. The signatures were valid. The language was so precise that challenging it would require Dominic's attorneys to expose exactly how the divorce had been obtained. Franklin folded his hands. He planned this so there was no way out for them, and no way back for you, unless it was entirely on your terms. Serena looked up from the document. "What does Cassandra not know?" she asked quietly. Franklin's expression shifted just slightly. "She doesn't know that 3 days before the divorce was filed, a fraudulent affidavit was submitted to Cook County Family Court, signed in your name. Forged." He let that land, which means the divorce itself may not be legally valid. Serena sat with that sentence for a long moment. The divorce may not be legally valid. She had spent 4 months believing she was nothing. No home, no husband, no ground beneath her. She had signed those papers in a hospital bed at midnight, alone, monitors strapped to her body, a paralegal she had never met standing at the door. She had believed, without question, that it was over. Now a 70-year-old man on LaSalle Street was telling her that document might be built on a forged foundation. "Walk me through it," she said. Franklin opened a second folder. Inside were photocopies, a court filing dated 3 days before her hospitalization, bearing her signature on an affidavit waiving her right to legal counsel during divorce proceedings. Serena stared at it. "I never signed this." "No," Franklin said. "You didn't. We had a handwriting analyst compare it against documents you signed during the marriage. The conclusion was unambiguous." He set the analyst's report beside it. 2 pages, clean and precise. "Cassandra had access to your signature through charity filings you co-signed on behalf of Ashford Group. Our theory is she used those as the source." Raymond leaned forward from his corner chair. "Which means Dominic either didn't know or chose not to ask." "Either way," Franklin said, "it creates serious legal exposure. For Cassandra personally, for the entire divorce proceeding, and it gives us leverage that has nothing to do with the trust." Serena looked at the forged signature. It was her name, written by someone else's hand, used to strip away her rights while she lay unconscious. There was something about seeing it that moved past anger into something colder and more certain. She had not come back to fight for Dominic, but she was no longer willing to disappear quietly either. "What do we do first?" she asked. Franklin picked up his pen, a plain ballpoint, nothing like the Mont Blanc sets on the desks of men like Dominic, and opened a fresh legal pad. "We filed to have the divorce proceeding formally reviewed by the court," he said. "That motion goes in tomorrow morning. And when Dominic's attorneys receive it," Franklin looked at her steadily, "that is the moment Cassandra Vale's entire plan begins coming apart." The motion was filed at 9:07 on Thursday morning. By noon, Dominic's lead attorney had called Franklin's office 4 times. Franklin did not pick up. He was walking Serena through the trust documents one more time, making sure she understood exactly what she held and what it meant. She understood. She was back in Hollow Creek by 4 o'clock. The drive home felt different from the drive in. Same highway, same gray December sky. But something in her had settled, the way a broken bone settles after it is finally set. Still tender, but aligned. She worked her Thursday dinner shift, tables 6 through 11, a family of 4 by the window. 2 truckers at the counter who always ordered the same thing. An older woman eating alone with a paperback, who left a $20 tip on a $9 check and wrote, "You're doing great" on the receipt. Serena kept that receipt in her apron pocket the rest of the night. At 11:15, after the last customer left and Dot was wiping down the counter, Serena felt the first contraction. She told herself it was nothing. Braxton Hicks, 34 weeks. Too early. The second came 18 minutes later. Dot looked up from the counter without Serena saying a word. 20 years as a nurse before she ever ran a diner. She crossed the room in 5 steps, pressed one hand against Serena's side, and counted silently. "How far apart?" 18 minutes. "Okay." Dot's voice did not change. Calm and exact. She untied her apron, hung it by the door, and picked up her keys. "Don't touch that bag. I've got it." "It's too early," Serena said. "Babies don't check calendars." Dot held the door open. "Move." Outside, the first real snow of the season was falling over Hollow Creek, slow and quiet, covering Route 9 in white. Serena stopped at the threshold for just 1 second. She looked back at the diner, the red vinyl booths, the hand-painted sign, the small cot in the back room where she had made her promise. Then she walked through the door. Whatever came next, she was not walking into it alone. Theodore Caldwell was born at 3:42 in the morning. 5 pounds, 9 ounces. Small, but strong, the nurse said, and this time the NICU doctor confirmed it with numbers. His lungs were clear. His color was good. 6 weeks early, and he arrived fighting. Serena held him for the first time at 4:15. Dark hair, still damp, and a crease between his brows that made him look like he was already thinking hard about something important. She pressed her cheek against his forehead and stayed there without moving for a long time. She named him Theodore James Caldwell. Caldwell. Her name. Her mother's name before that. Not Ashford. Never Ashford. Dot sat in the chair beside the bed and said nothing. She had driven through the snow, argued with the front desk about visiting hours, and had been in that room since 1:30 a.m. At some point, she had fallen asleep in the chair with her reading glasses still on, and her purse in her lap. Serena looked at her and felt something she had not felt in months. Not hope, exactly. Something quieter. The sense that she had people now. At 8:54 a.m., Raymond texted, "Franklin says the motion has been officially received. Dominic's attorneys are requesting an emergency meeting. You don't have to do anything today. Rest." She set the phone face down on the blanket. At 9:20, a nurse knocked softly and leaned in. "There's a man in the lobby asking about you. He says he's your husband." Dot woke up immediately, as if she had not been asleep at all. Serena did not look up from Theodore. She adjusted the blanket around his small shoulders, made sure he was warm. Then, quietly, and without any hesitation, "Tell him I don't have a husband." The nurse nodded and left. Theodore made a soft sound against Serena's chest. Not a cry, just a breath, just presence. And downstairs in the lobby, Dominic Ashford stood holding gas station flowers, realizing for the first time that he had absolutely no idea what he was going to say. Dominic drove back to Chicago in silence. No calls, no music, just the gray highway and the wipers moving against the last of the overnight snow. He had stood in that hospital lobby for 11 minutes before the front desk confirmed, politely but firmly, that the patient was not accepting visitors. He had left the flowers on the chair by the entrance. By the time he reached the penthouse, Cassandra was already dressed, already on her second coffee, already holding her phone with the particular tension that meant something had gone wrong, and she was deciding how to frame it before telling him. "Franklin Cole filed a motion yesterday," she said, "contesting the validity of the divorce proceedings." Dominic set his keys on the counter. "I know. Our attorneys say it will be dismissed. The paperwork was clean." He looked at her then, really looked at her. In all the months they had been building this future together, the dinners, the strategy meetings, the merger her father needed as much as his, he had told himself she was focused, clear-eyed. He had never once asked what clean meant to her. "Cassandra." His voice was quiet. "Was everything done correctly?" She held his gaze without blinking. "Everything was handled. That is not what I asked." A silence opened between them that had not been there before. Outside, 43 floors down, Chicago moved as it always did, none of it aware that something in this room was ending. "You never wanted to know the details," she said finally. That was the arrangement. Dominic walked to the window. He thought about the hospital lobby, the gas station flowers, the nurse's face when she came back empty-handed. He thought about a woman he had sent a paralegal to while she lay connected to monitors in the dark. He had told himself it was necessary. He was no longer sure what that had meant. His phone rang. Their lead attorney. He stared at Cassandra's reflection in the window glass, perfectly composed, completely unreadable, and understood, with the slow certainty of a man who had looked the wrong direction too long, that he did not actually know her at all. The hearing was held on a Tuesday morning in January, Courtroom 7, Cook County Family Court, the kind of room that had seen every version of human failure and had long since stopped being surprised by any of it. Serena arrived first. She wore a simple navy dress and her mother's small pearl earrings. Theodore was 6 weeks old and back in Hollow Creek with Dot, who had taken the morning off without being asked. Franklin walked in beside her and set his briefcase on the table with the careful precision of a man who had been waiting for this particular morning for a long time. Dominic came in 3 minutes later with 2 attorneys in expensive suits and the expression of a man who still believed these rooms could be controlled if you brought enough preparation. He did not look at Serena when he sat down. Then he did. Just once. A glance that lasted less than a second, but long enough for something to cross his face that no attorney could have coached out of him. Franklin presented the handwriting analysis, the fraudulent affidavit, the timeline showing it had been filed 3 days before Serena was even admitted to the hospital. He presented all 14 pages of the trust. He read Theodore's letter aloud, in full, and the courtroom went completely quiet when he reached the last 2 sentences. Dominic's attorneys objected twice. Both were overruled. Then Gerald Vale's name appeared in the evidence file, not Cassandra's, Gerald's. His private attorney had been informed about the forged affidavit 6 days after it was filed, and said nothing. The man who had written paragraph 11 into the merger agreement already knew the divorce was fraudulent before the ink dried. He had used it as insurance, against both Dominic and his own daughter. Dominic turned slowly and looked at the courtroom door, as if expecting Cassandra to walk in and explain everything. She did not walk in. She was, at that exact moment, on a flight to Miami, with 2 carry-on bags and a phone she had stopped answering 2 hours earlier. The ruling came down 3 weeks later. The divorce proceedings were declared void. The fraudulent affidavit had been introduced into court records without Serena's knowledge or consent. The trust documents were validated in full. Theodore James Caldwell was formally recognized as the primary heir to the Ashford Group Trust. $400 million, held in his name until 18, managed in the interim by his mother. Franklin called Serena with the news at 8:17 in the morning. She was behind the counter at Hollow Creek Diner, pouring coffee for the two truckers who always ordered the same thing. She set the pot down, walked to the back room, and sat on the edge of the cot where she had spent her first nights in this town, alone, certain she had nothing left. She did not cry. She just sat there for a moment with the phone in her hand and let it be real. Then she went back out and finished the coffee service. Dominic resigned as CEO 4 days after the ruling. The board had asked him to step down voluntarily. He did not fight it. There was nothing left to fight with. The merger with Vail Industries collapsed the same afternoon. Gerald Vail's legal exposure had made the deal untouchable overnight. Gerald released a statement through his attorneys that said nothing and admitted everything between the lines. Cassandra did not return from Miami. 2 weeks later, a Bloomberg brief noted that Vail Industries had quietly begun restructuring talks with a competing firm. Gerald was stepping back from operations. His daughter's name did not appear anywhere in the announcement. Dominic was last seen leaving the Ashford Group building on a Wednesday afternoon, carrying a single box. No town car, no security escort. He walked to the parking structure alone and did not look back at the building he had believed would always belong to him. The Mont Blanc pen set that had sat on his desk for 6 years, a gift from his grandfather Theodore on his first day as CEO, was left behind. No one moved it for a week. Then Raymond walked in, picked it up, and mailed it to Serena without a note. She would know what it meant. Spring came to Hollow Creek quietly, in the gap between 1 week and the next. One morning, the trees along Route 9 were bare. Then they were not. Serena noticed on a Tuesday, of course a Tuesday, while unlocking the diner at 5:45 a.m. with Theodore strapped to her chest, his head tucked under her chin, still asleep. She stopped on the sidewalk and looked up. Pale blue sky, air that smelled like thawed earth, and the first green things pushing through. She went inside, made the coffee, turned the sign from closed to open, and began her morning the way she had for 4 months, with purpose and without apology. At 7, Raymond came in. Booth 2. Black coffee. Eggs over easy. Except today, he brought a folder, quarterly reports from the trust administrator, the kind that needed her signature and review. He had been walking her through them for 3 months, going over numbers the way you teach someone to read a map, patiently, without making them feel lost for not knowing. She had started looking forward to Tuesdays. She had not said that out loud yet. She thought he probably knew. Dot came out with the coffee pot, looked at the two of them, and went back into the kitchen without a word, which was, for Dot, the loudest possible way of saying something. Theodore woke up and looked at Raymond with the serious expression he had worn since birth. Raymond looked back at him, exactly the same way. Serena watched them both and felt something she had not allowed herself to feel in a very long time. Not careful hope, not cautious optimism, something warmer, something with no conditions attached. She picked up the quarterly report and uncapped the Mont Blanc pen that had arrived 3 weeks ago in a plain envelope with no note. She signed her name, Serena Caldwell. Clear, unhurried, entirely her own. Outside, Route 9 caught the early morning light, the same road she had come in on with 1 suitcase, $41, and a gas station vitamin. She looked at it through the window and thought, I did not survive this place. This place is where I began. And that is where our story ends. Hey, if you are still here with me right now, I just want to say something real for a second. The fact that you stayed until the very end tells me that something in this story touched you. Maybe it was Serena's silence when she had every right to scream. Maybe it was the way she picked up that apron when the whole world had just walked out on her. Or maybe, just maybe, it reminded you of something you have been carrying quietly yourself. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." Serena never tried to destroy anyone. She just refused to let anyone destroy her. She did not wait to be rescued. She built something real, from a cot in a back room, from a $9 an hour job, from $41 and a gas station vitamin. That is not a movie fantasy. That is what it actually looks like when a person decides that their pain does not get to be the last word. If this story meant something to you today, please give it a like, share it with someone who needs it, and subscribe so you never miss the next one. We will see you in the next story. This is a work of fiction. All characters, names, events, and situations in this story, including Serena Caldwell, Dominic Ashford, Hollow Creek Diner, and Ashford Group, are entirely invented for storytelling purposes only. They do not represent any real person, living or deceased, any real company, or any actual legal proceeding. This story was created to explore themes of resilience, self-worth, family, and justice through dramatic narrative. It is not intended as legal, financial, or personal advice. Any resemblance to real events or real individuals is purely coincidental and unintentional. The Stoic quotes referenced in this content belong to their original authors and are used here purely for educational and inspirational purposes. We believe in honest storytelling, and we believe you deserve to know exactly what you are watching. Now, let the story begin.